Molweni baphulaphula ekhaya nani babukeli MK wakwamkhosana lo ohleli nomfundisi Pastor Tofu nibukele enye episode yethu ka Kisima Radio Heart to Heart Communication kwi fountain yethu engu Fountain of Kingdom Leadership. Molweni mfundisi.
Sabule.
Unjani
Kuhle. You blessed and you?
Yeah, kuhle nomfundisi khona. Siyabonga. Mfundisi, namhlanje we are dealing with a topic ethi leadership meets culture. Ngoku ndisayithethayo ivakala into enobunzulu. Now ndine interest yokuthi intoni ekwenze wafuna ukutacklishe this topic.
Yeah, I think the broad view is trying to bring the understanding about their intersectionalities about with leadership.
Okay. According to Yena culture, basically, every leader has a background in terms of culture.
Yes, every leader does have a background.
Yes.
But also every leader has influences. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, influences. And so when we're talking culture,
yes,
basically we're talking about patterns, behaviors, languages, and all of those things that pull people together and they share in common. So leaders don't function within a vacuum. They function within a context that has a culture, whether it's an organizational culture or it's a social culture or whatever. But a leader, no matter how gifted that leader is, they have cultural influences that impact on their leadership style and their leadership decisions. Take Jesus for an example. As much as he was the Son of God and we believe he was fully God, but we also believe he was fully human. And so he immersed himself in a certain culture and he was influenced by that culture. There are certain scriptures in the Bible where you really have to think very hard what this man was trying to say. And you find the depth of what he was saying to be entrenched in the culture of his time. Take for example the woman who came to him and he said to him, "No, you don't give your children's bread to dogs." And then the woman's reply is, "Even dogs eat the crumbs that fall down from the table." There was a Jewish understanding around foreigners and the use of the language of dogs around them. So you can see there how he himself was impacted by the culture in which he was born in. So we have to bring those to light because they will either enrich you as a leader or they will reduce your impact as a leader. So as a leader, you have to be conscious and aware of the impact of the cultures around you and how you lead.
On this note of cultures, would you say there's leaders out there that watch these podcasts? Would you say there are certain outlining barriers around culture that prevent leaders from penetrating audience okanye kwabantu ababizelwe bona? Umzekelo, ndiyi-leader myself, I come from a certain culture. What are the barriers that may prevent me from executing my leadership accordingly? Maybe we take the Xhosa culture, for example.
Yeah. So my first point of contact would be you as a leader, especially church leaders.
Yes.
Let's take that route for example. My first barrier will be who I read the Bible with.
Okay.
Because if I read it by myself, then I will develop my own opinions.
Okay.
But if I read it with somebody else, then I get to view it with that person's perspective.
Okay.
If I read it with somebody from another culture, then it opens it up even more.
Okay.
Then it exposes my own biases and blind spots. Because now I get to see through other people's eyes.
Okay.
So a leader, it's important for a leader to place himself in a place where you can be able to interpret society, interpret the world through the eyes of other people as well, not just your own biases. Because remember, your culture is limited. If I'm Xhosa, then
there's limitations.
There are limitations just merely by the fact that I'm Xhosa. If I grow up in the village, then all I know is the village.
The village surroundings, yeah.
I will not understand what else is happening around the world, which is bigger than my village, until I get exposed to it. So that exposure kind of shifts and changes the culture itself also, as much as it changes my worldview and perspective. So it's very, very important for you to understand right off the bat as a leader that what you know and how you understand what you know is not the only opinion, it's not the only view out there, it's not the only perspective out there. And so limiting yourself only to your culture as a Xhosa and how we have done things and how our fathers have done things, then there are certain places I can never enter and be influential in because I'm very limited.
Viewers, Fundisi, sorry for doing this to you. I'm actually going to come up with a very controversial question here. Fundisi, here's a leader. This leader grows or is groomed under a certain particular church. This person is called to lead.
Yeah.
But now this person, the only surrounding he knows is his own particular church. Now, are you saying, as a leader, it limits you if the only church you're going to visit is your own?
Very much so.
Wow.
Very much so, because especially when we're talking kingdom.
Okay.
Remember again, we're not talking merely your denomination or your local church. We're talking kingdom. And so you are very much limited if all you know is your local church. And quite in fact, you will not reach full maturity in your leadership until you start to learn to interact with people of different other denominations and other churches who see things differently and who even interpret scripture differently. But you are able to find balance without necessarily even changing what you believe, but being able to accommodate and include others so that things that are priorities are the ones that you learn to master and to push. So if you are able to lead in an interdisciplinary, in an interdenominational, in a collective manner with people of different views and still be able to lead well in those spaces, then your leadership is mature.
So I'm a leader in an environment that I've always grown in. Is it safe to say, Okanye, is it okay to say, andikabikho match fit for the real world?
Yeah.
When the exercise leadership, but the leadership here has not been tested because I've only tested it in environment.
Yeah.
And the family yayo, and dizaziyo futhi ne cultural difficulties zayo.
Yeah.
But and Pumanga, which is I'm as a leader, I'm limited.
You are very limited because then your true test doesn't come with what you agree on or what you agree with. And your true test will come with how you handle yourself in spaces that people don't agree with you and you don't agree with them. How do you handle yourself in those spaces? Because that's where growth happens. Growth doesn't happen with familiarity. Growth happens with exposure and being challenged in areas that you have not been challenged before. And so when we bring in this conversation, we're actually saying your next step of challenge as a leader, it is to expose yourself in places that you have not previously been exposed to, so that it shows you where your blind spots are and where your biases are. As long as you are with people who agree with you, then you will never grow to the next level until you come to people say, actually that's not a 6, it's a 9. And you standing from this perspective, no, it's a 6, it's not a 9. You've always seen it that way, and people who are on your side always see it that way, until you get somebody who stands on the opposite side and actually shows you that there are other possibilities. And so you as a leader will always be limited unless you challenge yourself and you push yourself into those spaces so that you are able to be changed also. You are able to learn further. There's a saying that a tree that grows to its full potential will die. So in other words, when you stop learning, when you stop growing and you reach what you perceive to be your full potential,
That's when you start
then that's when you start dying. So as a leader, that's not ideal. You don't want to die.
Yes.
Because if you continue learning, then you gain yourself a ticket to the next generation and the next generation, who will then have different opinions than what you have.
I like what you're saying. You're saying then you gain yourself a ticket to the next generation, which means if as a leader you stay in a familiar surrounding, there comes a time that a certain generation will outgrow you.
Yeah.
Will outsmart you because now you are left in a certain time.
Oh, yes.
And you didn't allow yourself. Funis, it's coming to mind that at some point in your life, as a leader as you are, you were at this point where you were used to a certain surrounding, and then you realized you needed to step out, and you did step out. Tell me, I mean, I'm speaking now from the understanding of what I do in my day-to-day living. That when you remove yourself from your surrounding and you start seeing what other people are doing, sometimes when those people from your different cultures start giving you feedback in terms of what you are giving them, you are at risk of being offended. I mean, you grow up knowing, understanding this thing this way, and now you also used to a surrounding that doesn't really challenge you that much. Now you step out and you start visiting various cultures, and what you have always believed starts being. How do you handle that as a leader, or how did you handle that as a leader?
It begins with your attitude.
Okay.
Because it's very important as a leader to have an attitude of learning.
Okay.
Rather than an attitude. There are spaces where you will be required to teach as a leader or lead. But you as a leader should never outgrow the call for you to follow.
Okay.
Following, then, that means you learn from other people and allow them to take leadership so that you follow and learn. So the problem most people make is that once they step into the place of leading or teaching or whatever, then they start to think, now I know it all, I've got it all, everybody else must follow. So they never revert back to a place where there are spaces I will enter and be required to follow. Not to lead. Wow. So then it becomes an issue of attitude. How you handle being taught, how you handle being critiqued, how you handle being criticized. It's a very important tension to have. That you must not always lead, but you must allow other people to lead you so that you can grow and learn as a person as well. So the person who gets offended it's a sign of immaturity in you as a leader. Because when it's time for you to learn, no student gets offended. When a student enters a classroom, you enter a classroom expecting that you will be challenged, expecting that you will learn something new. So when you have an attitude of a student, if we use biblical term, an attitude of a disciple, then you are able to gather information and learn from people whom you would otherwise not be learning from if you were the one leading. So you have to lay those things down. And pride, unfortunately, also is an attitude of the heart kind of thing. To say, who is it to tell me? Those kind of, you see those things at all in different spaces. So what I'm trying to say is that attitude is critical in whether you receive people who are there to grow you or not. And that also is held within your level of maturity.
Finis, thank you, man, very much. Viewers, I think what I'm getting out of this mostly is being a leader. One, you need to be willing to be led. You can't be an effective leader if you can't put yourself in a position where you follow, because you lead by being good at following. Is that correct? And I think point number 2 that I'm taking out of this is, as a leader, you can't keep yourself in one culture and understanding only one culture. You need to be able to cross culture as a leader.
Most leaders tend to surround themselves with people who are agree with them. as a sense of affirmation for themselves.
Which is a barrier.
Which is a barrier. It won't push you.
Okay.
And you need in your team people who will push you. And so then you have to build your team in such a way that you diversify it.
Okay.
And allow room for people within your organization or within your team to be able to say, no, I'm seeing it differently. And not be intimidated by the fact that you are the leader. When people are intimidated and are unwilling, or they see it as a threat to them to tell you that we think you are wrong in this area, then you don't have much of a team. You just have followers. So if you are building a team, you have to include people who will see things differently from you, such that when you make decisions, and they are biased decisions according to whatever culture, whether it's a shared culture within organizations or your own personal culture that you grow up in, or you are trying to maintain a status quo within the organization you entered, those people in your team are there to help you, show you where your blind spots are. And if you don't have people in your team who are able to do that, then you have a problem in your hands. Because that means you will go a direction and no one will be able to have the courage to confront you when you are wrong. Even so, it's also up to you as a leader to pull those people and give them that power to say, speak up, let me hear you, correct me if I'm wrong, agree to disagree with me, or be willing to show me if I'm not. You understand? Because then you are saying that I don't know all. And I have within me the spirit of learning as much as I have the spirit of leading. So those things are very, very important. The makeup of your team should not be made of people who are yes men, yes boss, and only do that. But people who are going to disagree with you strongly until you come to a place where what you are putting on the table is sharpened and effective.
Viewers, siyabulela mani ngobukela this episode of Kingdom Leadership.